Today we're taking a look at the scariest episode of the Joe Rogan Experience Podcast, episode number 1922, featuring paranormal investigators Sam and Colby. Now, I know, Sam and Colby are very controversial in the paranormal world. They've been accused of over-dramatizing their videos or even faking them. They have been accused of quote-unquote monetizing fear and sacrificing their credibility for clicks. Now, whether you think Sam and Colby are con artists or whatever you may think about them, it is true that they have investigated hundreds of actual haunted places that have very sinister histories. So we are going to hear their stories that they've shared with Joe Rogan and then go through the history behind the places that they have investigated. Starting when Sam and Colby shared their experience investigating the Waverly Hills Sanitarium. Just for a little context before we hear their story, Waverly Hills Sanitarium opened in 1910 as a facility to treat tuberculosis patients. Today, it's known as one of the most haunted locations in the world. Take a listen.
But the people that we went with who are our friends, that was their video. They had been to that place like 3 or 4 times, and one of the times they had set that ball down because the story goes that the person, the spirit or whatever that is moving that ball is like a little kid. And, you know, it's a sanitarium. It was like really sad, but, you know, the kids were allowed to like play on that level. And so if you put a ball down, it's supposedly, if there's someone there, it will move. And they put that little rope there specifically so that no wind would get it. Like you'd have to actually put like an immense force to push it. And so our buddies who had been there before filmed, I think they said it was like a 3-hour clip. 3 hours of this ball sitting in that same area, that's why we put the ball there, of just nothingness. And then like you said, it didn't seem like it was wind or like slow, it was like immediate push. It was like boom, and it like went off the screen.
That's what it looks like on the video. The video is bizarre.
It was a video, because I don't know, technical challenges or whatever. He was filming his YouTube video. I don't know why he was filming the video, but that's why it looks so bad. But yeah, basically he witnessed this ball after 3 hours randomly just getting, how does it get that kinetic energy to boom, move? And it's not
no
like
wind.
So you guys decide to set this up. So you put the ball down there, and this what is this box called again? That you
The
said?
REM pod.
REM pod.
Yeah.
And so does that detect wind?
No, it's
so does wind set it off? Like if you set it up outside and it's windy?
That won't set it off. No, it's only like coming in contact with it, pretty much.
yeah.
So something has to touch it?
Either
Or
touch
in
it
the
or
field.
in the field. So if you put your hand within a foot, it'll change.
Okay.
But if you're not, like he was standing next to it for like a minute talking what he's doing and it wasn't going off. And then he leaves the room completely. He's probably 600 feet away. We went up 2 floors and down the hall, and then it started going off, which was so monumental to us because it was like, why for the entire time that you were there, nothing's happening. But as soon as you leave, you didn't, or as soon as I leave,
The Waverly Hills Sanitarium was built in 1910 in Louisville, Kentucky. It was originally a small 2-story wooden structure that was built to treat people suffering from tuberculosis, which at the time was completely ravaging the country. Now, back in 1910, tuberculosis had the nickname the White Plague because it was very deadly and there was, no real antibiotics for it. The only quote-unquote treatment was rest, sunlight, and fresh air. Waverly Hills Sanitarium was built on top of a hill, away from everything, because tuberculosis spread easily. The thought of Waverly Hills was to isolate the tuberculosis patients away from the rest of society. By 1926, the number of tuberculosis cases had exploded, so Waverly Hills started to expand. They opened up a massive 5-story building that could hold over 400 patients at a time. And this is where things started to get dark. Treatments at the time were, let's just call them experimental. Doctors tried collapsing patients' lungs, ingesting balloons into people's chests to try to quote unquote, rest the lungs, and doctors even removed people's ribs to help them breathe better. A lot of, quote unquote treatments were brutal, and just being honest, none of them really worked. Now, over the years while Waverly Hills was up and running, it's said that around 60,000 people died in the sanitarium. Waverly Hills, built as a place to treat tuberculosis patients, quickly turned into a house of pain, death, and isolation, which is why, many people believe that today the Waverly Hills Sanitarium is haunted. Like, severely haunted. The creepiest part of Waverly Hills is something called the Death Tunnel. Like I said earlier, Waverly Hills was built on top of a hill, and the hospital needed a way to get supplies in and out, during the cold months. So they built this 500-foot long tunnel that sloped down the hill and connected the main hospital to the bottom of the property. It was originally meant for maintenance workers and for transporting things like food and linens, but as the death rate started to skyrocket, the staff began using the tunnel for moving dead bodies. The staff didn't want the other patients, seeing corpses being wheeled out every single day. So instead, when someone passed away, the staff would just, transport the body down the tunnel using a cart or a pulley system, and that's why the tunnel got the nickname the Tunnel of Death, because the tunnel saw thousands of dead bodies being passed through it. Today, people who visit the Waverly Hills Sanitarium have heard things like disembodied voices and seen, shadowy figures in the Tunnel of Death. And just looking at the Waverly Hills Sanitarium as a whole, if it's true that 60,000 people died in that hospital, it's almost a no-brainer to say that, yeah, this place is haunted to shit. And many people say that there are specific parts of the hospital that have the most activity, like room 502. Room 502 is up on the 5th floor, and legend has it that in the 1920s, a nurse was found hanging from the light fixture in this room. A few years later, another nurse supposedly jumped from the window in that room and died. People who have been in this room have claimed to have seen a woman in a nurse's outfit peeking out from the doorway or standing near the window. People have also claimed to hear voices saying things like, "Get out." Now, expanding on what Sam and Colby were talking about, there's a story about a young boy named Timmy who supposedly haunts the hospital. Now, nobody really knows the lore behind Timmy, but apparently he was a child who died at Waverly Hills, and he is known for playing with a ball, and many visitors and paranormal investigators, like Sam and Colby, have left a ball for him to play with, and a lot of those people have recorded videos of the ball moving on its own. It is said that Timmy is very friendly though, and he's just a lonely ghost child who wants someone to play with. Regardless if he's, friendly or not, that is still pretty freaking creepy. But not all spirits in this hospital are deemed friendly. I mean, one of the most disturbing spirits that roams the hospital is one called the Creeper. Now, the Creeper isn't described as a person. People say that the Creeper is a dark, shadowy figure that crawls on the walls, the ceiling, and even along the floor. Literally like something out of a nightmare. It's not like a normal ghost, it doesn't move like a person, and it's often described as this like inky black mass that just makes people feel absolute terror. Some people believe that the Creeper is the result of all of the trauma and suffering that's, soaked into the building, while others believe it could be something demonic. And then, of course, there are just, the classical haunted hospital vibes like shadow figures moving at the end of long corridors, unexplained footsteps, doors slamming shut, and voices when there's, no one else around. Investigators have claimed to even be touched, pushed, or scratched by something that, they couldn't see. So yeah, that's the Waverly Hills Sanitarium. The next haunted place that Sam and Colby talk about is the Queen Mary, which is one of the most haunted places in the world and is the most haunted ship in the world. Take a listen to Sam and Colby talk about the Queen Mary, and I will see you guys after to talk a little bit more in depth about it.
Let's do this. Let's just leave. It's fun to tell the story. Let's just leave. And so we turn off the camera, start packing up. We start walking towards the door, and as soon as we turn, actually we're about to get out of the room, the faucet turns on full blast for 4 seconds and then turns back off. And we all actually freeze and freak out. 2 of our roommates that were there at the time just immediately started crying. We ran in, we were okay, how was that actually possible at all? Maybe that's a sign of it doesn't want to be filmed and it doesn't want us to leave. So maybe let's just not film this and try one more time, just for the heck of it. And so that's what we did. But this time it worked. And to the weirdest extent, we just put away all of our cameras. We sat in the most serious tone saying okay guys, before this didn't really believe, so if this is happening, let's have something happen. And so we all sit in the dark together and we start calling out questions. And we're okay, is there anybody here? And we hear a knock. And so we're okay, maybe that's something.
Very faint though, it was like a tap.
Like a tap. And so we're okay, let's just run with that. Can you tap more than once? and there was like 3 taps. We're like, okay, this is really weird. Like, can we start asking questions? Going like, we were talking probably like this, but then there was times where we talk like really quiet. And like, we tested everything. But so what we did is we decided, let's ask questions using these taps. So we said, tap once for yes, tap anything more than once for no. We had a yes or no conversation for 35 minutes with something that we cannot explain. Like, okay, like, let's like ask a question under our breath.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like, this thing does not want us to leave. And at that moment, the entire floor shook. Boom. Like, we were all like, oh my God, what was that? Was
you
something
could feel the vibration in your feet.
crashing on the ship or something? Was huge. And so we're like, okay, so this thing doesn't want us to leave. And maybe we should just like ask questions under our breath for the rest of the time, just so we know it's not some employee, it's not someone like screwing with us the entire time. So fast forward to the very end, we were like, okay, we've had a bunch of conversations. At this point, we really believe if this is truly something, I want to know something about something deeper than just yes or no questions, or just like something silly of like how many people are here. So I decided, let's ask about religion. And I ask out, is there a heaven? And it knocks 3 times, meaning no. And at that point, our 2 religious friends that were there like immediately jumped up and said, we have to leave right now. He's like, well, in the Christian religion, anything like demonic or evil is supposed to like basically disprove that there is a heaven in order, you know. And so what they were saying is like, we don't think this is some like spirit or something paranormal there. We think it was something that was trying to lead you away from heaven or Christianity.
Demonic territory type thing.
The Queen Mary was built back in the 1930s during the golden age of ocean liners. It made its maiden voyage in 1936, sailing from Southampton, England to New York City. At the time, it was the fastest and most luxurious ship in the world. It had ballrooms, swimming pools, high-end dining, and celebrities, politicians, and even royalty were all on board at one point or another. But then came World War II, and that's when things for the Queen Mary changed. They painted the entire battleship gray and turned it into a troop transport, giving it the nickname the Gray Ghost. At one point, the Queen Mary, or I guess the Gray Ghost, was carrying as many as 15,000 soldiers at a time. Because of how fast the Queen Mary was, enemy submarines couldn't catch it, so it was a super valuable ship during World War II. After the war ended, the Queen Mary went back to being a passenger ship again, sailing people across the Atlantic Ocean until 1967. By 1967, airplanes were just, a way more popular way to travel, and basically the glory days of ocean liners were pretty much over. So the Queen Mary took one last trip to Long Beach, California, where it has been docked ever since. Yes, I know, how does a ship that, didn't have any tragedy become so haunted? Well, the Queen Mary did have its tragedies, the most well-known one being in 1942. At this time, the Queen Mary was still being used as a troop transport ship during World War II. It was there where the Queen Mary accidentally collided with one of its escort ships off the coast of Ireland. And it wasn't just like a small bump. I mean, the Queen Mary literally sliced the escort ship in half. And because of the strict wartime protocol, the Queen Mary was ordered not to stop, and over 300 men who were on the escort ship died. There are also at least 49 documented deaths that happened aboard the Queen Mary. Some were passengers, other were crew members who either, fell down staircases, drowned in the swimming pools, or just had freak accidents during the ship's operations. One of the more disturbing stories involves a young crew member who was crushed by a watertight door in the engine room. Door 13, more specifically. So the Queen Mary saw wartime accidents, people dying of unnatural causes, and even some mysterious deaths. Now, after the Queen Mary was docked in Long Beach, California, it opened up to the public as a hotel and as a tourist attraction, which is where some pretty creepy ghost stories come from. One of the most talked about spots on the ship is the first class swimming pool. It's this big, elegant old pool that's been drained for decades, but that really hasn't stopped people from seeing strange things. The most famous spirit tied to the area is a little girl named Jackie. People claim that they have heard Jackie laughing, splashing in the water that, isn't there, and even calling out to her mom. Some have seen wet footprints appear out of nowhere or a ball roll across the tiles on its own. Now, the weirdest part is that Jackie's ghost has been spotted by multiple paranormal teams, even, ones working independently from each other. The most famous haunted spot in the Queen Mary is room B340, which is the room that, Sam and Colby stayed in. Room B340 was actually shut down for decades because of, how extreme the activity was. Guests staying in that room would freak out. I mean, they claimed that they would get pulled out of bed, they would hear voices, and they would even see someone standing at the foot of their bed in the middle of the night. The room reopened a few years ago as a haunted suite, and people still report paranormal activities such as faucets turning on by themselves, covers being yanked off, and even full body ghosts roaming around the room. One legend says that a man died in that room under mysterious circumstances, and now he's the one who is haunting the room. The engine room, where the young crew member was crushed to death, is also said to be very haunted. Some people have reported seeing a figure in blue overalls, which, matches what the man was wearing when he died. He's been seen just standing near door 13. Visitors in the engine room have also reported hearing metal banging, feeling sudden chills, or just getting this weird feeling like they shouldn't be in that room. There's also the children's playground on the ship that's said to be haunted. This area is a bit more subtle, but I mean, it's still creepy at the same time. People have reported hearing children giggling, running, or what sounds like a basketball bouncing on the ground. Some say they've caught glimpses of small figures darting past the doorway, but when they check, there's, nobody there. But, there's also been reports of paranormal things, happening across the whole entire ship and not just in these areas. People have heard footsteps in empty corridors, cold spots, doors that open and close on their own, and, shadow figures just casually standing at the end of hallways. The Queen Mary is a pretty creepy ship that I personally would never want to stay in, but hey, to each their own. The next place that Sam and Colby talk about is the Villisca Axe Murder House, so go ahead and take a listen.
So that was in 1912?
That's when that all happened, yeah.
So over 100 years, but that was like one of those things that we'd researched, and that was like interesting, but as soon as we stepped foot in that house, it was a whole different vibe.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that it was one of the few times we actually had to leave. So halfway, after doing a little tour with the whole, with the tour guide, he was telling us all these stories, and just being in there was weird. Our buddy was feeling like he's gonna throw up, and it was just really odd. That doesn't happen every time, but when it does, it's kind of and it might be because of how fucked up it was.
Right.
There was a lot of things that went down in this murder.
Well, there's also about it, right? It would have been interesting if someone brought you into the house without telling you anything. How do you feel in this place? And then see how you feel then.
Right. Is it like a placebo effect maybe that because you know the story, you're walking in there?
I mean, that's a crazy placebo, right? To know that a whole family's murdered with a fucking axe.
Right. And the most gruesome part about it is the killer used the blunt side of the axe. So you can still, because we went there to investigate, you can still see the axe markings in the ceiling when he was going back.
Oh, God.
To go down. And again, it's so weird because there was on the top floor, there was the parents' room, but then 5 steps down a wooden creaky hallway was the children's room where there was 4 of them, and then there was 2 more of their daughter's friends that they were hanging out with that were downstairs that got murdered as well.
So how is it possible that he was able to get to all of them with the blunt side and just
did he break in, or was he hiding in the attic? We don't know.
Really creepy.
Now, I have a full video going over in detail the Villisca Axe Murder House and that whole story, but we can really quickly talk about it. The Villisca Axe Murders took place in the tiny town of Villisca, Iowa. Back in the early 1900s, Villisca was your typical small Midwestern town. There was dirt roads, church bells, and, neighbors who all knew each other by name. It was the type of town where nothing really bad ever happened. People didn't lock their doors, and crime wasn't even something that people thought about. Now, at the center of all of this is the Moore family. It was Josiah Moore, who was a successful businessman working for a company that sold farm equipment, and there was Sarah Moore, his wife, who was active in their church. Together, they had 4 children: Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul. On the night of June 9th, 1912, the Moores attended a church event. It was a special night, and they'd even invite 2 young girls, Lena and Ina Stillinger, to spend the night at their house. These girls were friends of their daughter, Catherine. The plan was innocent enough. It was to go to church, walk home together, and then enjoy a summer sleepover. The morning of June 10th, 1912 started off just like, any other day, until someone noticed that something wasn't right at the Moore house. One of the Moore's neighbors got suspicious when she saw that the family hadn't come outside. The house was eerily quiet, and there was no kids running around outside, there was no chores being done, nothing. Eventually, Josiah Moore's brother went to the Moore's house to check on them. He let himself inside, and that's when he made a discovery that would haunt the town, and honestly would haunt the whole entire world for decades. All 8 people, Josiah and Sarah Moore, their 4 kids, and the 2 Stillinger sisters, had been bludgeoned to death while they slept. The killer used an axe, striking some of the victims so many times that they were completely unrecognizable. It was absolutely horrific. And as investigators started to pour into the Moore's house, things just started to get really weird. I mean, first of all, the curtains had been drawn and the mirrors were all covered with cloth. There were no signs of forced entry, and food had even been taken from the kitchen. That led investigators to believe that the killer had been hiding inside of the house, possibly in the attic, waiting for the family to go to sleep. Lena Stillinger was found in a strange position, and some evidence suggested that she might have woken up during the attack. There were hints she may have fought back, or even worse, she may have been assaulted. Now, I'm not going to get into any of these suspects or the theories because, like I said before, I have a full video going over everything, so if you are interested in this case, go check that out. But let's just get to the paranormal claims and the hauntings. So today, the Villisca Axe Murder house is still standing, and it looks exactly like it did in 1912. It's the same walls, the same rooms, the same attic. Visitors have reported hearing children's voices, laughing, whispering, and calling out for their parents. Doors have opened and closed by themselves. People have said they've felt a hand tug on their clothes or heard footsteps upstairs when everyone's downstairs. And now the creepiest part about this house is that you can actually stay overnight there, and many people who have stayed in the house have claimed to wake up strangely in the middle of the night at exactly 3:15 a.m., which is the exact time that the murders happened. Some people have said to be woken up to loud bangs or the feeling that someone is standing over them. There have been reports of shadow figures, especially near the staircase to the attic. One guest claimed they saw a tall, dark figure step out of a room, then just completely vanish. And lastly, people have said to have left the house with scratches or weird marks on their bodies. Some truly creepy stuff. I mean, a house with this much tragedy, I 100% think, it has some sort of energy left behind, or it is just haunted. Also, the fact that the Villisca Axe Murderer was never caught, I think, if there would be any place in the world that was haunted, it would be the Moore's house. All right, and then going into the last case from Sam and Colby, the Amityville Horror house. Now, Sam and Colby haven't investigated this house as it's not open to the public, but they still discuss the house and the case, so let's take a listen.
Did you guys ever go to the Amityville Horror House?
They don't let you in there. We've been trying to contact the owners for like years.
Really?
Yeah.
But if they're going to invite, let's do it.
Do people live in that house?
I think so. I think it's just not even a business. It's just people live there and are like, fuck off.
I think that's one of the places that they changed the address in the street so that people couldn't find it.
Oh, but it's very recognizable because of the window pattern.
Right.
The way the windows look. That movie scared the shit out of me.
Same.
When I was a kid. How much of that is like the movie is based on the truth, or is it just made up? Remember, like, he broke through the wall and he went into the other side, and there was like a demon behind the wall or some shit. I saw that movie when I was like 10 years old.
Yeah, it was a long time
ago. It's a very vague recollection. How old is that movie? Amityville Horror.
Book 77, movie 79.
Okay, so I was like...
The murders happened in
12.
Yeah,
wow,
well,
quick after the movies, the murders, rather, like, we need a fucking movie.
This is a sick story. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Capitalize on it.
I mean, they really capitalized pretty quick.
They did.
That's all I remember is the murder part of it. I didn't remember if there was alleged demons during the real life version.
Yeah, it was like a normal guy, and then he lived in this house, then killed his whole family, right? Mm-hmm. And then there was a thing, you broke through the wall. I remember, see if you can find the scene. There's like a scene where he breaks through the wall, and I remember that freaking me out as a 12-year-old, going, bah! Like this idea of, like, your dad breaking through this hole in the wall.
God. Yeah.
What's it with the axes? You know, apparently every
always
murderer just do axes.
Yeah.
On the night of November 13th, 1974, a 23-year-old man named Ronald DeFeo Jr. walked into a bar in Amityville, Long Island, and said something along the lines of, "You gotta help me. I think my family's been shot." People rushed back to his house with him, and that's when things got dark. Very fast. Inside the house, 6 members of the DeFeo family were found murdered in their beds. His parents and his 4 siblings had all been executed with a .35 caliber rifle while they slept. But things got strange as investigators went through the scene. There were no signs of a struggle. No one had tried to run. Everyone was found lying face down in bed. Even weirder, none of the neighbors heard any gunshots, even though the weapon didn't have a silencer. Now at first, Ronald DeFeo Jr. acted like he didn't know what had happened. He first blamed it on a mob hit, but then, under questioning, he confessed to murdering his family. He claimed he was being controlled by voices in the house that told him to kill his entire family. Naturally, I mean, the media exploded. The idea that a young man had just murdered his entire family in a, peaceful suburban neighborhood was shocking enough, but the whole, the voices made me do it thing really sent it to a whole nother level of creepy. Ronald DeFeo Jr. was found guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences. But the story doesn't end there, because just over a year later, a new family moved in. George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 kids, moved into the house in 1975. They knew about the murders, but the house was going for a major discount, so they thought that even though there was a horrific murders in the house, it was a major steal. From the moment they moved in, things were just off. I mean, George started waking up at the same time every night, and according to police reports, the time he would wake up was the exact time that the DeFeo murders took place. George also became obsessed with the fireplace and was constantly feeling cold, even when it was hot inside the house. And even his personality began to change. Kathy Lutz, his wife, claimed that she levitated off the bed one night. She also said she felt like she was being touched or even embraced by something invisible. The damn invisible man. The kids started to all sleep together in one room because they were, afraid to be alone, and one of the kids even claimed to see a red-eyed pig-like creature outside their window. They also described unexplained cold spots, strange smells, and slime, like literal slime oozing from the walls. At one point, a crucifix on the wall spun upside down, and when they brought in a priest to bless the house, the priest reportedly heard a deep voice growl, "Get out." After just 28 days, the Lutz family fled the house in the middle of the night, leaving behind most of their belongings. They never spent another night in that house. Now, word started to get out about what the Lutzes claimed had happened in that house. The priest's involvement, the levitations, the ghost pig, the slime. It was literally everything you would want in a horror story. And that's when Jay Anson got involved. He worked with the Lutz family to write a book about their experience, and in 1977, the Amityville Horror, a true story, hit bookstores. The book was a massive bestseller. People literally could not get enough of it. So in 1979, Hollywood came knocking and the first Amityville Horror movie hit the theaters. Over the years, the story kept growing. There were dozens of books, movies, remakes, spin-offs, like everything was about the story of the Amityville Horror. And yeah, I mean, that is the main story of the Amityville Horror. I do suggest though that you guys go and watch the Amityville Horror movies. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but they're a decent watch. And with that, I mean, this has been the Scariest Joe Rogan Experience Podcast episode. I know I have covered a lot of these stories in previous videos, but I wanted to combine all of them together just because I think having Sam and Colby on the podcast was something different. And, getting to hear people talk about their experiences investigating haunted places, it's just really cool to hear. Again, even if you think Sam and Colby are lying or, whatever the case may be, the places they have investigated do have really rich and haunted histories. So it's always fun researching these places and then, telling you guys about it. But if you guys enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe with those post notifications on. And without further ado, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.